Hey, I wanted to show you a setting that comes on by default on Cura, and that is messing up all of your flow calibration. Um, so if you do some calibration on your printer, you probably do the E-steps calibration so that when you extrude 100 millimeters of filament, you actually get 100 millimeters. And then you go and do the flow calibration on your slicer and do this typical test where you print a cube with no infill, no top, no bottom, just one perimeter, typically 0.4, so the diameter of your nozzle, and you measure it and you see how off you are. So 49, 48, 50, 50, 48. So this is about 49, kind of about 49, right? So that comes up to about 80%, right? Sorry, 20% off from the mark. So this should be 0.4, and it's actually almost 0.5. So it's about 80% off. And that's a lot. That's a lot. So that would mean that we're really over extruding all around. And so if you use that 80% on your flow, on Cura, and you do some basic prints, so say a cube, you probably start to see some weird behavior where you have under extrusion on the top, so there are little gaps on the top of prints, and you probably see a little bit of blobbing around, and some over extrusion on some parts. And that's really weird because supposedly the extruder is perfectly calibrated, but it's actually not, because of this setting that comes on by default on Cura, and that I think, sadly, the concept is great, but it doesn't work, and it creates more problems than it solves. The setting is called compensate wall overlaps. So TLDR, if you don't want to stay for the explanation and for me to show you the test that I did, is go to your shell settings on Cura and look for compensate wall overlaps and disable that setting. Calibrate your flow, calibrate your steps and then your flow, and you will start seeing much better prints, both in how they look and in dimensional accuracy. So now I'm going to show you how I figured this out and how this works and why this setting is bad. So like we saw on Cura, if you go and try to calibrate your flow with a 1 perimeter cube, you will notice that you will be off by a lot, probably, unless your printer, I don't know, it's really top notch, or you're doing some voodoo magic. You're probably going to be off by a lot. But I started testing Prusa slicer a couple weeks ago, and I started doing the calibration, and I was amazed to see that once I calibrated my E-steps, first time I did the test, I didn't have to adjust anything for the flow to be spot on. Right? So I was amazed. And is this some kind of magic? Why is Prusa so perfect out of the box? Not with just one printer, but both my printers that I have. It was the same result. It was spot on after I calibrated my E-steps. Why is Cura so off? So I went back to Cura and I did the same thing, right? So I extruded with 100% flow, 1 perimeter based mode, and I got around 050 walls, like maybe 49. So about the same result that I got last time. And that meant that I had to adjust my flow to 80%. And then my 1 perimeter base mode cube was it was almost perfect, like 0.41. If you're within 0.05, that's good enough tolerance for 3D printer. That's actually great tolerance for 3D printing. So this supposedly is calibrated, right? Now I wanted to see, okay, so what happens if I print 2 walls now? So 80%, 2 walls, 2 perimeters. Well, turns out it's really off. And it's under extruded. So if anything, this should be over extruded, right? Because if you multiply this by 2, you should get 0.82, right? Plus, if you add the tolerances from the motion system, because now there are 2 perimeters to be done side by side, you should get over extrusion, if anything. But I'm getting a lot of under extrusion. And actually, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. No, probably not. But yeah, you can kind of see it there. But the walls are actually not completely bonded together. You can see a split between the walls. So it's really under extruded. So I told myself, what the hell? Why is this happening? So I went to Prusa and did the same thing with my perfect calibrated thing, which is just 1, like the extrusion multiplier in Prusa was just 1. And I printed this 2 perimeter cube and I got 7.74. So I would say that's pretty good. That's just a tiny bit off, but it's certainly much better than 0.68, which is really, really under extruded. So in Prusa, I might have to actually do something like 1.05, something like that, to get more accurate. But at this point, like 0.74, 0.75 is good enough. So I said, okay, so what is Cura doing? Why the flow, when it's 1 wall, it's so much different than when it's 2 walls? And why I'm seeing these inconsistencies on extrusion? So I started looking for some kind of setting that maybe was trying to calibrate the flow dynamically or something like that. And the only one that I found, and it's not immediately apparent, is this one that is called compensate wall overlaps. And the idea behind this setting is that when you have 2 perimeters, so 2 walls, and you have them too close together, you don't want them to overlap, because it's going to be there's going to be a huge over extrusion where they meet. So you want them to be side to side and not overlapping. So that sounds great, right? That's a good idea. The problem is that this setting is either completely bugged or the implementation is just horrible, because it doesn't do that at all. It just makes a mess. It does more harm than good in practice. So how I figured out that this is actually doing this is I went and looked at the G code, and I confirmed that yes, the Cura generated G code is actually over extruding in some parts and under extruding on other parts. And when I turned this setting off, the numbers on the G code were much closer to the ones on Prusa Slicer, on the G code generated by Prusa Slicer. So I decided to turn that off and repeat basically the same tests. So this is no compensate wall overlaps, one perimeter with 80% flow. So what would you wouldn't think about that this is actually 80% off from 0.4. I'm getting 0.34 on the walls. So that is 20% off from perfect. So if you actually went and just turned that setting off and just did your E-steps calibration and print something, you're going to get much better, much more accurate extrusion from Cura just by turning that setting off. So this is two perimeters, 80% with the setting turned off, and I'm getting 0.76, 77, about that. Yeah, 77, 77, 70. Oh yeah, this wall actually split, so that's why I'm getting the huge difference there. So you can see that this wall split here, right? So that's why I'm getting 78, 79 here, but this is 77, 76. So that also is what we saw here, right? Two perimeters, 80% with the setting turned on. We're getting about the same difference. But when you do one wall, where is my one wall? Yeah, you actually get 34, which is about half of this. So this setting is actually compensating when there's just one wall. So there is no way that there is going to be overlapping here. So it's actually under extruding by default, even though there's no other walls. So that's why I was seeing so much under extrusion. And actually, if you go to many guides that tell you how to calibrate things, the flow calibration, and they tell you, if you, for example, on Teaching Tech, amazing guide, it says that actually if you do this and you get a huge value and then you print something and you see under extrusion, then dismiss it. Just use the 100%. Because I would assume that it's a little bit of they didn't know what is happening, and it's better to just err on the side of, if it's so off and you're going to see under extrusion, maybe just leave it. Don't try to calibrate it, right? So I actually figured out that this is the setting that is causing these issues. It's not that the extrusion is off by 20%, by 30%, by whatever. It's that this setting is completely messing up the calibration of the flow. So then I try to adjust that number for with the setting turned off, and I came up with 94.12%. So one wall I got 0.4, right? So that's spot on. Cool. So if I do two walls with the same setting, I get 0.76. So that's great. That's just 0.04 from 0.8, which should be this. So this is within tolerance still. So great. So then I wanted to see what happens if I up the extrusion a little bit. So 98% without the setting turned on, one wall, and I get 0.42, which is still in tolerance, pretty accurate. And if I do the same thing with two walls, I got 0.7778, So that's even closer, right? And if I do 4 walls now, I get 1.760, sorry, 57, right? I should get 1.60, so I'm 0.03 off. So this is really, really accurate. This is within tolerance, and this is really accurate. So by this time, I was convinced, yeah, this setting is completely screwing up your slicer flow. And this is why things sliced with Cura have, everyone knows that it's kind of hard to get tight tolerances. For example, like, especially when you do print in place parts, everyone is asking, how do you print this? How do you get the bearings to work, right? I'm using my Ender 3 and I'm using Cura, and I have my settings completely calibrated, and it's all coming completely stuck together, and I cannot get it to work. And they normally tell you you should calibrate your flow, and probably you want to take it down. The issue is that that's not really the issue. The issue is this weird setting, because when I turned that off, I started getting perfect prints. And I have no issues with dimensional accuracy since I turned that setting off. So yeah, that is it. Turn that off. It's not doing any good, or it's actually doing more bad than any good that it could be doing. So I hope this was interesting and it helped you. If you stuck until the end, thank you. And yeah, let me know if you want to, if you knew about this, or maybe you had some issues with this. Let me know, because I think this is big. Like this solves a lot of extrusion issues with Cura. So yeah, see ya.